Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 232nd Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. Boy, do we have a ton to deal with today. It's great to see everybody. We're up to 36, that double high. And we're going to start with Mayor Heidi in Waldport, Oregon. Then we're going to talk to Bob FITRAKIS about the origin story, which he broke of the rise of Jeffrey Epstein. It's really a legend. Then we're going to get in the second half hour. We're going to talk about gerrymandering and the attempt to guarantee that the Republicans stay in charge here. Very, very big deal. We, of course, got our birth these calls in April 2020 talking about election protection issues, and this is a big time. We also want to talk about, of course, protecting the 26th election. Second hour, we're going to start with our old friend nuclear power and the gutting of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and I'm going to have Linda Seeley, straight from the belly of the beast in San Luis Obispo, California, Roger Rapoport and KEVIN KAMPS, the hardcore. Really going to be good to have that, everybody. And we're also being joined by THORNE DREYER, who is at Bragg Radio in Houston, and has written a book, and which we want to talk about, and is just turned 80. He's a veteran of the Liberation News Service, as am I, dating back to the late 1960s. So we got a ton to deal with, and it's great to see everybody with us. Let's start right in. Mayor Heidi Lambert is the duly elected mayor of the bustling metropolis of Waldport, Oregon. Has been doing battle with a, shall we say, fascistic MAGA city council there that's been trying to get rid of her, and now she's fighting back, boy, and they don't know who they're tangling with. Mayor, what's the latest?
Well, boy, isn't all that true, right, Sluggo? I thought I was volunteering and I got a full-time job that doesn't pay. uh, well, the bad news was my case got dismissed from the court. But the good news was the judge invited me to open a civil case against the city. I had a writ of review that I had put in, a petition for a writ of review in the court. That's what gave me the injunction. And ultimately, that's why they had to reinstate me. But they never admitted what they did was wrong. And they continually won't admit what they're doing is undemocratic. So I'm going to have to open a civil case to take this before a judge so the judge can rule on this. And I'm going to claim a whole bunch of damages of $1, Sluggo. $1.
All
I'm going
right.
to do it all.
Well,
Yep.
don't spend it all in one place. And
Well, it was suggested to me to sue for like $1 million and like give it to somebody like Greenpeace. But I think it's better just keep money out of it because it's really not about money. It's about freedom of speech. And so that's what I'm doing. So, meanwhile, my community is petitioning for a recall of all 6 city councilors, everyone but me. So we're gathering 200 signatures because we're a tiny little town. And we're going to recall the entire council. Actually, my community is. I'm not even involved at all. But I will be involved with bringing on the new councilors and working with the new council so that we can get out of this rut that my little town has been in for the last 10, 15 years with the same city council.
so when you recall the city councilors, do you get to send them back to Amazon?
I think they threw away the box. I mean, they've been here a long time.
All
I found
right.
out that one of the city councilors has been on for 25 years, Sluggo.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, Heidi, you're a role model for all of us fighting the duly elected mayor of Waldport, Oregon, and keep us in touch. And you were on the front page of the state's biggest newspaper, and that's very, very cool. And you're a crusader for democracy. If you get this petition through to recall the city council, when is the election?
So there'll be a special election. I'm told because I won't have a quorum that the county commissioners will actually come in and they'll help make a quorum with me to get 3 counselors on, and then that quorum would then bring on and appoint 3 others. So it's not really a electoral process other than signing the petition and getting folks to sign the petition.
All right. Well, this is fantastic. It's democracy in action. Heidi Lampert, we're really great to see you. And you keep us posted. You are now officially again the mayor. They removed, they,
I never wasn't the mayor. I was always the mayor the whole
right.
time.
They thought they removed you, but they really didn't. So Mazel Tov, good for you. And keep us posted, everybody. This is Heidi Lampert. Heidi, put your um, uh, connections in the chat, please, so that people can get a hold of you if they need to, if they want to. Mike Hirsch, we're up to 70 people. We're going to move ahead with Bob Fitrakis now. But go ahead, Mike, what you got?
I was just wondering, Mayor Heidi, would you mind if we called you Fighting Heidi, like in 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 the in the proud tradition of Fighting Bob, and we have our own Fighting Bob Fitrakis coming up. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting we call it a fight because really, it's just existing. Like I'm not fighting. I'm really just here and I was just really elected and there's no fight. But you can call me Fighting Heidi because I'm not gonna just vacate my seat. But again, I'm just here doing what I said I was gonna do. So I think
Right.
it's sad we have to fight to be able to do that, you know?
And
Maybe we can call you Smiling Heidi.
Yeah, I like that better. I really am trying to stay amused, because I think that if I wasn't amused by our local predicaments of politics, then, we get kind of devastated.
all
And
right, Perry
Well,
Kendall has put in higher road, Heidi. I like that.
or High Road Heidi.
High road, Heidi. We like that. Very
And
good.
and
Okay.
and
And I will.
Heidi, Heidi, what you were saying reminds me of what the bard Elvis Costello sang in one of his songs. I used to be disgusted, but now I try to be amused.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
there you go.
we gotta stay amused. We have to find humor and we gotta make it not all be a fight. It's kind of got to be a dance, right? We got to make a
There you
dance out
go.
of this.
Well, high road, Heidi. I like that. And I, I will remind you, you said you're not getting paid. The great nonviolent activist AJ Musty was asked about what it was like to have a career in activism, and he said, "Well, the pay's no good, but the work is steady."
Yeah,
So, but the pay is great because you get to come on and be with wonderful people who love you, and that's as good as it gets. So there you go.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right, thank you so much, Heidi. I do want to mention the passing of a truly great woman, Joanna Macy. She was in Berkeley and a wonderful Buddhist writer and activist, and we will miss her greatly. Linda Seeley, who was with her at the end, will be on in the second hour when we talk about nukes. I also want to mention very amazing documentaries. One is the Billy Joel documentary is really worth seeing. It's a two-parter. Where he got that voice, I don't know, but it's a great piece of work. And also, and we're going to go to Bob Fitrakis now in Columbus, Ohio. There is a documentary, I believe it's on Netflix, that my wife and I watched. It's called Surviving Ohio State, and it's about the sexual harassment scandal with the wrestling team at Ohio State University. It was recommended to us by Congressman Jamie Raskin, and it really indicts the truly horrible Jim Jordan, who was a major figure in the college wrestling world at Ohio State. I'm not going to tell you what it's about, but surviving Ohio State, devastating documentary. And we're about to delve into the origin story of Jeffrey Epstein in Columbus, Ohio. And you got to understand that we got the great Bob Fitrakis with us. Everything that Bob is about to tell you was going on at the same time as this horrible sexual harassment situation at Ohio State with the athletic team. So keep that in mind when you tune in. Okay, we've got, oh yes, MYLA RESON points out we also lost Dan Hirsch, a truly great safe energy campaigner. He will be missed. He was a brilliant guy, very steady, and MYLA knew him well. And our best wishes to Dan as he goes to that great Solartopia in the sky. Myla will be on with us in the second hour to talk about the nuclear issue. Myla, Mike Hirsch tells me you did a great job yesterday on the PDA call. We're going to welcome you there again. Okay, Bob FITRAKIS, you and I have been co-conspirators since the late 1980s. You broke all the major stories about the theft of the 2004 election. I was basically your stenographer. And at the same time, you are the first to have written about Jeffrey Epstein. It's quite amazing that in so many ways, Jeffrey Epstein and all he has brought is a product of Central Ohio. Can you tell us how and tell us where Jeffrey Epstein really came from? Nobody else knows this story as well as you do because you broke the first stories about Jeffrey Epstein and you have the honor of having gotten a death threat from probably Jeffrey Epstein himself. So tell us where Jeffrey Epstein came from, please, Bob.
First time I heard about Jeffrey Epstein was from the Inspector General of Ohio, David Sturtz. And basically, he's there to root out public corruption. And he said, do you know anything about Les Wexner's boyfriend, Jeffrey Epstein? So he was known as the boyfriend when I first knew him before his, penchants for being predatory towards young women. Is that he was thought to be the boyfriend, and he was also known as the valet. He would arrange things for Mr. Wexner.
So everybody, I'm not sure everybody on the call knows, certainly people who've been with us before have heard it, but Les Wexner, as Bob reported, through some serious mob connections, became a billionaire. He founded the Limited clothing chain and Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie Fitch, I guess, and he made billions based in Central Ohio in the women's clothing business. And he's still a billionaire. In my years of teaching, and you're looking behind me at my outdoor classroom at Capital University in Bexley, Ohio, I asked through the years, I taught there 14 years, many of my students who worked for the Limited, if Lex Wexner was gay. Nobody hesitated. Everybody said yes. And Jeffrey Epstein, who had a history of his own, but came to Les Wexner and somehow emerged with a lot of Les's money, like hundreds of millions of Les Wexner's money.
Showed up right about the time that Wexner's financial guy, Arthur Shapiro, was whacked mob style. And when a very famous memo came out called the Shapiro murder file, which pointed out that Wexner had ties to organized crime. So you're talking about Jeffrey Epstein being the man who replaced the bookkeeper for one of the country's leading mobsters.
Right. So Wexner is rarely referred to as a mobster, but your reporting, and this is what earned you your death threat, I suppose. There should be a merit badge on the left for death threats.
The death threat was I got a letter to me saying that I was a candidate for a toe tag if I kept writing about Jeff Epstein. It wasn't a death threat in the name of Les Wexner. It was a death threat in the name of Jeff Epstein. I'm like, who the hell's Jeff Epstein?
Well, you found out and you broke the stories. So Jeffrey Epstein's origin story is that he somehow connected with the billionaire clothing magnate Les Wexner, who's still alive, by the way, and gay though he may be.
We got to recall that Epstein handled all the logistics in terms of moving money around for Les Wexner.
Right, and they also had links to the CIA because Epstein, and here's Steve Caruso has put up a bibliography here of Bob's reporting on Jeffrey Epstein, and this goes way back. What year did you break the first story about Jeffrey Epstein, Bob?
The around 92 was when, but that was local. I also broke some stories around the year 2000 as well, particularly Epstein's ties to the royal family. Prince Andrew, for example, and Epstein spent a lot of time together, as did, of course, Trump and Epstein.
Right. Now, when did you first detect a Donald Trump on the Wexner Epstein radar?
Well, Nigel Rosser is who is a writer from who was writing heavily in England for the Evening Standard, was able to come up and share it with me. No one in the U.S. had written anything about the ties between Epstein, Wexner, and Mar-a-Lago. One of the things that came out was that he told me that Epstein had just taken a trip, he and Ghislaine, with Prince Andrew, and the place they went was a place called Mar-a-Lago, which was owned by Trump. So
Still
they were
is.
that was one of his favorite
Right.
places to go for.
So those of you now, I mean, everybody, of course, is following the Epstein story. Everybody's waiting for various shoes to drop. And the bottom line to know is that Jeffrey Epstein really had no money of his own. He had connections as
He
well.
was a math tutor
Right. Apparently,
at
he
an
was good at
all-boys
math.
school.
And then he became a fixer for Les Wexner. And it's significant. Les Wexner's got to be in his 90s or late 80s anyway. I believe he's in his late 80s. He's still, a major figure financially. He established a housing development east of Columbus, Ohio, called New Albany, where, I don't know, it's a few dozen McMansions. These are really large homes. And Les Wexner has the biggest one there. And he gave a neighboring house to Jeffrey Epstein, right, Bob?
At one point, the second largest house or most expensive house in Franklin County was owned by Jeffrey Epstein, courtesy of Les Wexner.
Okay, so Les Wexner's 87, and he graduated Ohio State. Then he started to go to Ohio State Law School. He dropped out, got a five. I've heard him speak, so and I've met him, but
Yeah, he's fond of the term a lucky donkey. He refers to himself as a lucky donkey.
Well, and he also, as Bob has pointed out, he was bringing in clothing from China for his clothing business, and the mob. Well, tell that story, Bob, please.
Well, what came out in the Shapiro murder file when Wexner's money man was whacked, supposedly by the Gambino crime family, the story that came out of there. Which story did you want?
Well,
the control over the rolling stock is that essentially Wexner's contribution to the mob was all these trains, planes, trucks, and warehouses that were a good place to stash illegal contraband.
Yes, and so Wexner, in exchange for ferrying stuff in his clothing shipments from China for the mob, the Barlow family in turn set Wexner up with his clothing stores and his shopping centers around the country.
That's
that's
right.
how
He
the
got
limited
a sweetheart deal where he was put into his limited brand and other clothing were put into these malls everywhere. You're absolutely correct.
So, and I assume at the time that Jeffrey Epstein was doing the books for Les Wexner, which I'm sure were thoroughly cooked, and at the same time, Wexner.
If it was after 85, that's when they hooked up. 1985.
Wexner and Epstein hooked up in 85.
And that's right about the time that Epstein got to know Ghislaine Maxwell, because it was her father who, it came out, was tied to the Mossad and died mysteriously falling off a boat. which
Right.
I know Mr. Epstein was asked about that tragic death by the police.
Well, we have 100 people with us, 101 now. And so I've seen in much of the media coverage, there seems to be a general mystification about how Jeffrey Epstein got his money. And Bob
From Les
Fitrakis,
Wexner.
and Bob Fitrakis is the guy who has shown the root of Jeffrey Epstein's fortune, which was with Les Wexner in Central Ohio, the limited clothing company that includes Victoria's Secret. So we, for years, decades, we've had these scantily clad women walking around, and the money that they make for Les Wexner a lot of it went to Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein used Victoria's Secret models as bait. He would set up parties all the time with those models.
Wow. Jeez. So there you go, folks. You heard it from the horse's mouth here about how Jeffrey Epstein originally got the money to buy that island, to fly people all over the place. And it's all mob money through a women's clothing business run by a billionaire in Central Ohio with Jeffrey Epstein as his boyfriend and his fixer. I mean, Epstein was known to being really good with moving money back and forth between countries and also doing logistics.
And he handled logistics as well with the planes, because remember again that the plane service he brought to Rickenbacker was the notorious Air America, the one that was running guns and drugs in Central America through the Contras.
Right. And that was Jeffrey Epstein's magic. That's how Jeffrey Epstein became, well, they said his net worth at the end was around $600 million. And, 20 years before, he was worth about 600, period. So all that came through Les Wexner, through Central Ohio, through the mob, controlling Wexner's money and logistics, which included Rickenbacker is a small airport south of Columbus and next to a military base. And the CIA, with help from Epstein and Wexner, used that airport to ferry guns and drugs back and forth to Central America.
And that's how he ended up getting his 727, the Lolita Express. That was formerly a plane owned by the Limited. And it's also how he ended up getting the first or second most valuable residential property in New York City. That was given to Epstein by Mr. Wexner.
And the Lolita Express, which, as you say, had previously run women's clothing from China and elsewhere, was where Donald Trump hooked up with Melania. Is that correct?
That's referred to in the police reports.
Well, there you go. So, folks, here it is. Here's the birth certificate of Jeffrey Epstein and his major fortune, right out of Central Ohio, which you can see behind me on the campus of Capital University, where I taught.
There was a police call from a woman, Maria Farmer, from Epstein's house in Central Ohio, the second most valuable property in Central Ohio, saying that she had been assaulted. And it was Ghislaine and Epstein, who she named in the telephone call to the police.
Well, I just saw her last night interviewed about her first encounter with Donald Trump, which was really an ugly story, boy. But okay, we have Mike Hirsch and then Steve Caruso. Anybody else want to jump in? We got 105 people with us. Mike, go ahead. Then Steve. Anybody else want to ask Bob a question about the origin story? And no one else has talked about this. This is so. If you see people in the major media mystified as to how Jeffrey Epstein got his money, this is it. Mike, go ahead, and then Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Sluggo. And it's great to see you again, Bob. You're doing great. And thank you so much for testifying about what you uncovered. It's so important. And I think eventually the mainstream media might come around to looking into some of this. I want to make a real quick point that whether Wexner is gay, straight, bi, that doesn't matter to us. The only thing that matters to us is that he's a crook and he's a terrible guy. And his sexuality, we don't really care that much about it.
No.
And another thing is, that I understand that Epstein was given a teaching position mysteriously when he had no credentials for it, and that was part of his falling upward. You know anything about that, Bob?
Yeah, wasn't he teaching at Dalton there?
Yeah.
And he had been hooked up, and they were using him even though he didn't have the credentials, as you alluded to. Uh, he had a
Right.
way of charming people.
Yes, it was MYLA RESON has pointed out now, Lynn Surham, it was Bill Barr's father. Bill Barr became Trump's attorney general and very much Trump's attorney general, not in the service of the United States. And Bill Barr's father is the guy who gave Jeffrey Epstein his job at the prestigious Dalton School in New York City. But in his defense, I suppose Epstein did seem to have some kind of genius with moving money around and the mathematics of it. Steve Caruso and then Donald Smith.
Yeah, with the case of Epstein, isn't that a personal matter with Trump? It's not an official presidential matter. So anything Trump does under this guise that he's the president and he can pardon Gisela and all that, it's not presidential. It's personal. It's a personal thing with him, and it has nothing to do with running the United States except that he shouldn't be in office. That's all I got to say.
Well, we'll see. He's certainly raised the issue of pardoning her. Somebody in the Congress is now demanding the transcript of the talk that the latest Trump functionary had with Ghislaine in prison there. By the way, last night I watched two very convincing pieces on how Jeffrey Epstein could not have committed suicide. One was from a mobster who was in the same cell, who said there's no rafter in there, and it was absolutely impossible for anybody to hang oneself in there. And the other was from a coroner who's been in the business for 50 years, who examined the body and said, or read the reports on the body, and said that there were all sorts of suspicious bruises and that the wounds that killed Epstein could not in any way, shape, or form have been self-inflicted. So we'll see where that goes. We have 108 people with us. Donald Smith, go ahead. Anybody else? We're going to let Bob go in a minute or two, but anybody else want to jump in, please do. Donald, go ahead.
Yeah, I read that there are connections with strong connections between Wexner and Israel, and also Robert Maxwell. Could you talk about the connections with Israel, possibly Mossad or the CIA, please?
Bob?
Wexner was in the mega group, which was a group of essentially Jewish billionaires that would intervene on very important issues involving Israel. So, and also he was listed in one police report as having being the largest single individual donor to Israel. So yeah, he's been in, and part of that goes back to a man named Max Fisher, who was the mentor for Les Wexner. And Max Fisher used to be tied up with the old Purple Gang. And he was one of the first incredibly wealthy people that was a Republican. Historically, the wealthy Jewish crowd had been Democrats.
Well, the Purple Gang, Bob, you're wearing a purple shirt, and you're from Detroit. The Purple Gang was a big a mob group in Detroit. Is that right, Bob?
Correct, yeah. Thought to be the Jewish mob group out of Detroit.
So now we're going to see what happens with Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't think there's any credible case that can be made, and this is nonpartisan, that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. I don't believe it for a minute. As I say, I watched two pieces on it last night, and I mean the guy who was the mobster who was talking about having been in that very cell for many months was right out of Damon Runyon. I mean, he said basically everybody in that block they looked at you 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, they woke you up, so you can never get any sleep. And that, it's completely implausible that anybody could commit suicide in those conditions.
Sure, particularly when you're right, when they're under a heavy watch like that.
Yeah.
You'd have somebody with ties to the CIA. Oh, that would be Jeff Epstein, or ties to the mob. Oh, that would be Les Wexner. So the connections, to get somebody killed there at that high level, through insiders, they're the guys with the ties, Wexner.
Right. Okay, so now we all know. Nancy Naparko, you want to jump in here, please?
Couple of things. Thank you, Bob. I'm a Detroit native also, by the way. Good to hear from you.
Were you in the Purple Gang, Nancy?
No, I missed that.
Oh, okay.
But just a couple stupid comments. Can we call her Maxwell instead of Ghislaine? It makes her sound like a girl. She's not a girl. She's a responsible adult, equal to a man. And the other thing, asking, didn't I read somewhere Epstein arranged the Melania meeting Donald Trump. Is that true?
Yes. It was a mixture.
I heard that story. I don't know whether he did or not, but Trump was hanging out a lot during that period. And just the Mar-a-Lago comment that was in the Nigel Rosser story indicates how close they were in that period.
Yeah, well, much of course, everything that we're talking about. Well, that's the great thing of having Bob here. Bob is a primary source, as we say in academia. Everything else that we know is secondhand. A lot of the secondhand stuff that I've read says that Epstein did, in fact, fix Trump up with Melania. She was 19, allegedly, at the time, and they had their first carnival knowledge on Epstein's plane, which had been Les Wexner's plane, running clothing for the Limited. Is that correct, Bob?
That is correct.
So, Nancy, that's it. We can call Maxwell Ms. Maxwell if you prefer, but that's where we're at. Okay, anybody else? Lynn Feinerman, go ahead, please, Lynn. You're unmuted, Lynn.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think that we really need to keep in mind that, I know this sounds like a broken record, but we really need to keep in mind that Ehud Barak was on that, and that there is a very heavy Israeli to this. And I just think it's very, very important. And I think that it probably determined the kind of policy that Netanyahu thought he could get away with.
Okay, well,
I agree that, and it's really Israeli politicians and the intelligence units that keep showing up again and again, as it does with U.S. And British intelligence as well. But the ties between Robert Maxwell and Wexner and Epstein, I think, are incredibly important and need to be investigated further.
all right. Well, Bob, you're the ultimate source. We're, Bob and I have written God knows how many books together and articles. And but I vaguely remember, apparently I wrote a few of these articles with you. And, the way we would work is that Bob would call me with all the latest stuff. And this was certainly true in the 2004 election. I'm a historian. Bob's a political scientist. So nobody but Bob could figure out how they stole the 2004 election. And he would call me in the middle of the day, and then I'd write an article and send it to him at 3 a.m. And then he'd wake up at 8 and correct everything I'd gotten wrong and put the article out on the freepress.org, which is his website and still is. And that's how the stories broke on the 2004 election, and how the stories broke, some of them anyway, on Jeffrey Epstein. So all of you here, all 112 of you, you've heard it here straight from the source. And Bob, I just hope that, well, I guess you're not going to get a toe tag now that Jeffrey's gone. He's the one who wound up with a toe tag, right? You didn't have anything to do with that,
Correct.
did you? Okay.
No, but they did. He was asked about what he knew about the death of Robert Maxwell.
Jeffrey Epstein was.
Yeah, that he was at one point, at least from the Ohio investigators, a person of interest. And then he got very close to the daughter soon after that.
Wow, unbelievable. All right, everybody, you've heard it here first. Thank you, Bob. You'll keep with us. And I want you to stay because you are also an expert in election protection. John Steiner, you raised the issue, and we're going to talk about the 2026 election. We have Alice Embree and THORNE DREYER with us from Texas. Alice is going to talk to us about the gerrymandering going on there, and we want to get into a deep discussion up until the top of the hour, and then we're going to go nuclear. But John Steiner, did you want to jump in and talk to us a little bit about what you think we need to look for in the upcoming 2026 election? John Steiner, are you with us there? Maybe John didn't hang with us.
Here he comes.
Hold
Oh,
on.
there you are, John. Go ahead.
I think we all know that there's a range of efforts going on to suppress the vote, if not steal it. And I think the latest we heard is that the Republicans would consider contesting in court every significant election that they lose, and that those court efforts could go on until 2028. And we might not sit another Congress in 2026. Now, how much of all of this is speculative and how much of it is the next rotten thing that's coming down, we don't know.
Well, let's explore it. I do want to mention that there was news today that Roy Cooper, the former governor of North Carolina, he was just replaced in this election, has confirmed that he will run for the U.S. Senate in North Carolina. He will be a very heavy favorite because Tom Tillis apparently didn't want any more of this and has stepped down, leaving the seat vacant. And the odds are very heavy that Roy Cooper will win. In fact, I will tell you that I was really pulling for Roy Cooper to be the Democratic nominee for president, and I believe he would have won. I've seen him interviewed. He's a very interesting, very personable guy. He is 70, but I'm 80, so he's a youngster to me. But so that in North Carolina, and I've also read, and I believe it's true, that had the Republicans not successfully gerrymandered North Carolina, that the Democrats would now control the Congress. That they gerrymandered enough seats in North Carolina to give them enough seats to control the Congress. And I believe that's the case. And that's why we want to go now to Alice Embree and THORNE DREYER in Texas. Can you, Alice and Thorne, give us the bird's eye view here, the up close and personal view of this whole attempt to gerrymander Texas in a way to guarantee God knows how many more seats for the Republicans? Alice, we see you, please.
Well, I'll say that God may not know, but Trump thinks there are 5 more congressional seats. And it was Trump that put pressure on the governor of Texas to call a special session after, which we're in right now, to redraw maps. And so it's there's 7 hearings going on. There are rallies going on all over the place. The legislators have gotten on planes and gone to see Gavin Newsom and gone to see Governor Pritzker in Illinois to put some pressure on, look, if they can do it here in the middle of, in mid-census, put pressure to do it in California and Illinois. And so those of you who know that congressional districts are usually drawn up after the census. And this is, needless to say, an unusual attempt to draw the congressional map in the middle of the decade. And all this is about is trying to pad, while he thinks he can in a severely gerrymandered state, pad his votes so that, he's not held accountable for all the stuff going on. All the cuts to Medicaid, all the closed rural hospitals, all the lack of food assistance. And it's, I think that sometimes people, we were the prequel to MAGA. We've been living in it. We have bounties on women and people who assist women to get abortions. We have women who can't get medical care in a hospital in a miscarriage and therefore bleed out in parking lots. We have, this is kind of what fascism looks like, and we get we've been living with it. Now then you overlay that with what Molly Ivins said, and she goes, I think of Texas as the laboratory for bad government. And that's kind of how it is. And we've got a lockdown, state leadership. We have 31.9 million people living in Texas now. So we're, it's continuing to grow, largely probably because we don't have a state income tax and we get people like Elon Musk here. It's not a pretty picture, but there's a lot of fire in the hearts of a lot of Texas leaders. And I'd almost go so far as to say more than you can find, in the safer states where, people are trying to triangulate or whatever. We don't get that luxury here. It's all about kind of life or death issues for us. And one thing I want to say about Governor Abbott, there's lots of bad things to say about Governor Abbott, but he just rushed to do this special session as soon as Trump said do it. And I want to tell you what he didn't rush to do. Congressman Sylvester Turner died in March of this year. There was no special election. We've been sitting here in Texas with 800,000 Texans around in the Houston area with no representation in Congress. And,
So he doesn't want to have an election for that seat because he knows it'll go to a Democrat.
Well, it'll go to a Democrat. The
right?
problem is the election will happen in November. It could have happened in April.
Right.
That's the point. And so for a whole year, those people are unrepresented. Now, I won't go on and on. I know I could, but I want to call out the people that are just doing wonderful jobs at rallies, and that's Beto O'Rourke. And I got to hear him Thursday at the Capitol when the first of the hearings were about to begin. Jasmine Crockett, and most of you know who she is. Joaquin Castro, maybe who he is. James Tallarico, who braved the Joe Rogan show for 2.5 hours, is a young legislator. Gina Hinojosa. Anyway, these people are showing up. They're showing up to thousands of people in rallies all over this state right now. And the only tool in the toolbox, is going to be quorum breaking. And so we'll probably see that again. We've been told have their backs. In other words,
so let's explain that quorum breaking. And we went through this before when they did a previous gerrymander in Texas. In order to prevent the legislature from having a quorum where they can put in the new districts, the Democrats leave the state.
That's right. So
I
think they went to Oklahoma and then New Mexico in 2003. But more recently, totally over voting rights, they left and went to Washington, D.C. That was kind of during the pandemic. So,
well, why don't they just go and take Ted Cruz and go back to Cancun?
Cancun or Greece or wherever he wants to go whenever we have really bad things happen.
Right. So this is going on now. And traditionally, redistricting happens on a 0 year when the census is. And in fact, isn't that the law? Or I guess it can't be enforced by the feds, no?
Well, I think we're kind of living in the states' rights era, as long as that works for Republicans, So, no, I don't think there's anything in the law that says that Congress, that the districts have to be redistricted. But it is the typical way it happened. And of course, The best way is with bipartisan commissions. But we don't have the best way to do anything in Texas. So just so you know.
Well, au contraire, I think that Molly Ivins, who I knew and loved dearly, did say that your governor, Rick Perry, had the best hair in the country.
Well,
that's why she called him Governor Good Hair.
Okay, I'll take it back. He has good hair. And
Molly Ivins also is the one who coined calling George W. Bush a shrub.
Yeah,
that was her.
Sure.
but I wish she was with us today.
Oh,
Mike Hirsch, go ahead, and then anybody else wants to jump in. There's a ton to talk about here with gerrymandering because it's going on in Florida, and there's a big debate about it now in California. But go ahead, Mike Hirsch.
Thanks, Lago, and great to hear from you, Alice. You're doing an amazing job informing us about the chaotic mess that is Texas. We don't, nobody has to mess with Texas. Texas does a great job of messing with itself. I just wanted to mention redistricting is mandatory after the census to reapportion to make sure that the districts don't get too unequal in terms of population. But Texas has pioneered what I call redistricting. And I remember it wasn't that long ago that a bunch of the Democrats left the state trying to stop an effort to redistrict. After they redistricted one time, they tried to gerrymander it even more. People left the state. I think they sent out Homeland Security to drag them back home from Louisiana and Oklahoma. But, Texas would be extremely entertaining if it wasn't so dangerous to the people living there and then all the rest of us. So.
Yeah, it can be entertaining. So 2003 was the redistricting quorum busting, and that was Oklahoma and then New Mexico. But there was another effort that happened, and that was over voting rights, and that was in 2021. And I don't know, y'all probably vote by mail or something like revolutionary like that, or get to actually register online, but we don't. And, it's very restricted. And so during the pandemic, Harris County did this great bang up job having drive-through voting and all kind of things, which they made illegal. But it was after that there was a quorum. It was 2021 that our legislators went to Washington, D.C.
Well, why can't Willie Nelson become governor of Texas? I mean, that would be the best. I was on Willie Nelson's bus, by the way, and the good thing about that bus is when you were on it, you didn't have to buy pot. So, we have to understand a major reshaping in a bad way of our country happened in 2010. Obama was elected in 2008, didn't pay any attention to what was happening, and in 2010, under the direction of Karl Rove, the Republicans seized control of many of the state legislatures and then turned around and redistricted. And there's a book about it by a guy named David Daley. It's called, I can't say it on the air, it's called RATF-CKED. And it talks about, what was done to redistrict the country, to gerrymander the country. And that's a lot of what we're dealing with today was set up in 2010, and unforgivably, really, Barack Obama did nothing, didn't talk about it. I'll never forget he got up in his Barack way and after the election of 2010 and say, well, we just got shellacked, as if that was very cute. And he didn't talk about gerrymandering, and the Democrats did nothing about it. And it's been the issue of our time because of what the control of Congress has done. This is a nightmare. And so they are, this idea of redistricting in an off year like this is complete. It's not, the federal Constitution has very limited things to say about elections at the state level. And so it says that the census is to be done every 10 years. And then there's a suggestion that that's when you redistrict. But, the states have done whatever. And of course, the Democrats gerrymander as well as the Republicans. I will say this, and as a Californian, I am disturbed. I'm not comfortable with what they want to do here in California. They want to redistrict California to match what Texas is doing. But California, and we fought on this issue. Bob and I, FITRAKIS and I, and others have written about gerrymandering. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, very quickly, the term gerrymander, Elbridge Gerry was the governor of Massachusetts in 1812, and he redistricted the state to serve his party. He was a Jeffersonian, and they said that the districts looked like salamanders, which they did. They do, and so after him they called them Jerry gerrymandering. That's where the term comes from. So, by the way, Eldridge Gerry almost became president of the United States because James Madison had to flee from the British and he was vice president. But nonetheless, so in California, thanks to Arnold Schwarzenegger in a good way, he put in $3 million, and we set up in California a very sane and small d democratic system with a nonpartisan commission that sets up the districts. And they're fair. And we actually have competitive elections in California. And now Gavin Newsom, who I can't even we'll talk about Gavin Newsom next in the nuclear part, but he wants to waltz in and redistrict California in the same way that they're redistricting Texas, except to favor the Democrats. And I am very uncomfortable with it. He's saying, well, we got to fight fire with fire. You know what happens when you fight fire with fire? Everybody gets burned. Mike Hirsch, you had something earlier to say about that. But let's go to MYLA RESON. MYLA has her hand up, and then we'll go to Mike. Go ahead, MYLA RESON, please.
Oh, thank you, Harvey. I've got a couple of questions. One is, am I correct in understanding that that the California voters would have to approve of moving away from an independent redistricting commission in order to counter the possible gerrymandering in Texas? That's a question.
Yes, it's right. You're right.
Okay, good. Oh, that's good to know. I thought that was the case. And then the other thing is that I just wanted to announce that we are currently live streaming this group session on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed already, we've got 111 people watching. Please, I'm going to put the link in the chat right now. And please like this stream and subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and help us promote this session on YouTube. And if for any reason you are unmuted, please mute yourself before you click onto the the link, or else we'll be getting double audio. So thank you so much.
And MYLA is my co-host on the Solartopia radio show, which we're about to take national, and with Tonka Bricka, who's also on. MYLA, it's great to have you with us. Dorothy Reich, and then Don Goldmacher, and we're almost to the top of the hour. Alice, you've been great. We really appreciate it. And, as we went by the song "Go Ask Alice." Are you 10 feet? Are you 10 feet tall? No. Okay. Dorothy Reich, go ahead, please. Dorothy, let's get you unmuted. Trying. Go ahead with Dorothy, and I'm trying to unmute Don Goldmacher. There we go. Dorothy, go ahead. You're good. And then Don. Dorothy Reich. All right, Don Goldmacher, and then we'll go back to Dorothy. Go ahead, Don.
Hi, Harvey. Couple of things. I would love for John Steiner to elaborate a bit more about the rest of the country and how our elections could be threatened in 2026. Because those of us who live in California, and I'm one of them, can't do much about what's happening in Texas. But we need to pay attention to the rest of the country. And that's part of the reason I'm on the call. And then I want to take issue with what you just said about being very uncomfortable with undoing the bipartisan commission for selecting districts in California.
Okay.
Because we are in a state of emergency. We are seeing a fascist takeover of this country. They're using every tool in the toolbook they can to make sure this country is irrevocably transformed in a way that we cannot restore democracy anytime soon. So on this particular issue, I think Gavin Newsom, though I don't have much respect for him much of the time, I think he's spot on. I actually listened to him this morning, in which he said, what are we doing here? We're just going to let them roll over us and get away with everything? He said, that's crazy. And so if we don't redistrict in California, we better redistrict in the other states that are democratic, that have the ability to still gerrymander, because we can't let them get away with it. I wonder how Alice feels about that.
No, I mean, I think the urgency that you're talking about is absolutely true. And we feel this. I recognize that there's a better way to do to help districts, and it's bipartisan commission. I recognize that. There's a better way to do a lot of things. We shouldn't have an electoral college, but there's a better way. But we're in an urgent crisis. We feel it. And I think our legislators made sure that Gavin Newsom felt it too, because that's what they did. They went up there and talked to him.
Okay, thank you. Dorothy Wright, go ahead. Or John Steiner, if you want to say something, jump in. Dorothy, and then Mike Hirsch. Mike Hirsch had some interesting stuff to say about that this is a double-edged sword. But Dorothy Wright, glad to have you with us. Can you talk? Hello, Dorothy? Okay. I don't know what's going on. John Steiner, did you want to reply to what Don Goldmacher said? And then we'll go in with Mike Hirsch. John Steiner is muted. Go ahead, Mike Hirsch. Everybody's muted here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks, Lugo. There's a tendency that I call the monkey paw redistricting, where you have to be careful what you wish for. There's two different kinds of nefarious anti-democratic redistricting. One is to protect incumbents so they cannot be knocked out, where you have an overwhelming support, 60% blue or 60% red. The other one is redistricting to maximize the number of seats for one party or another. And then they have to decide, well, is 52 to 48 safe enough? Is 51, 49? And with Trump's recklessness pushing them to cut that expected margin as close as they can get away with, there's always the chance that there could be what's called a wave election. And a lot of these very closely gerrymandered districts would become competitive unexpectedly, and some of them could flip to the Democrats. So it hopefully will backfire. Partisan political gerrymandering is wrong. The voters need to be able to pick their representatives. We do not want the politicians picking their voters. That's wrong. It's backwards. Alice, I see you nodding.
That's one of the slogans. Yeah.
It's a slogan.
Exactly that.
Well, we also had the Ohio Democrats redistricted in Ohio, and they did it basically to get rid of Dennis Kucinich. Mm-hmm. And so, and I'm not trusting Gavin Newsom as far as I can throw him. He's bigger than I am, so I wouldn't be able to throw him anywhere. But, I am very, very, having fought against gerrymandering all these years, Mike makes a very important point. Be careful what you wish for.
Oh, and by the way, I think that Gavin Newsom could be the new Governor Goodhair.
Well, he does have good hair. I will say that. Either that or he's got a great wig. I've been trying to unmute Dorothy Wright, but not successfully. John Steiner, did you want to jump in?
I don't know. My thing says I'm not muted.
Here you are. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Speak.
So I was just going to say that years ago when they first started with this redistricting, a bunch of us in the Democratic Party called and we fought tooth and nail against it, but they got the signatures and we anticipated something like this would happen. We never anticipated fascism, but we anticipated that we needed to be able to fight fire with fire. And now it's going to be a big problem to undo this redistricting commission and get it back in the hands of people who understand the situation and will fight fire with fire. We cannot allow the Republicans to get away with this. New York has to redistrict, and if California can redistrict, that will take a big chunk out of whatever he's able to do in Texas. We can't have this. We are taking taking a butter knife to a gunfight here. We don't understand. We want to play fair. They don't play fair. They don't play. They're vicious thugs that we're dealing with here, fascist thugs, and we're saying, well, it's not right. It's not right.
Well, but what Mike's point is, is that redistricting is a double-edged sword, and it comes with surprises, and also comes with costs. One thing I guarantee you the Democrats in California will do if they get a hold of redistricting is to screw all the progressives, and which they did in Ohio. And you could say goodbye to the likes of Katie Porter and maybe even Ro Khanna if they get a hold of these districts. So I don't trust it. And the The California system is what should be. If it was national, as Gavin Newsom has pointed out, to his credit, if our system in California was the national system, we wouldn't be talking about this. And so it's unpredictable when you start to gerrymander in what you think is your favor, and it can backfire. On the other hand, as we know, the gerrymandering in North Carolina is what gave the Republicans the control of Congress. By the way, I misstated. Roy Cooper is 68. He's not 70, so just for the record. Don Goldmacher, let's get you unmuted. Anybody else want to jump in on this? We're going to move on. But this is a very important, and Alice, thank you for being with us. You look a little like Molly, by the way. I loved Molly Ivins. She was just a wonderful.
Really tall.
She was, yes, she was tall,
Really
yes.
tall.
Well, if you're Alice, then you're 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
Don Goldmacher, please.
Yeah. I mean, Harvey, you know how much respect I have for you and your thinking, which is fabulous. But you just made the point. They already stole it vis-a-vis North Carolina.
Right.
And nobody was paying attention, right?
No, actually, people were paying attention. We knew exactly what was going on. But,
did they do it with the Democratic governor named Roy Cooper?
Yes, but he couldn't control the legislature.
Yeah, but I mean, see, again, we're pointing to a weakness.
Same as Wisconsin, by the way. Wisconsin is having a big fight.
Okay. What again, we're pointing to the weakness of the Democratic Party, especially going up against the fascist movement. The Democratic Party is totally incapable of doing it. They don't even understand what it means to be an opposition party. Newsom, at least to his credit, whether it's opportunistic or whether he really gets it, at this point, I don't much care. I want to see these dumb stand up and fight every step of the way. I mean,
hold on. A couple things real quick. Love what you're saying, but we can't swear.
Okay.
And this is also a nonpartisan Zoom. So keep that in mind, and thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll be nicer. I live in a senior
wait, Donald, you don't have to be any nicer. Just family friendly, my friend.
Just self-censor in advance. Got it. I now live in a senior residence with people in their 80s, 90s, and 100s. These people who have lived all their lives in this country and done various good things and whatever, they are so angry at the Democratic Party. I cannot begin to describe it because I meet with them weekly. We're organized into a group. We go out and demonstrate regularly. And it's like they keep saying, where's the Democratic Party? We're the leaders. So we're really fighting a two-front war is the way I imagine it every day. We're dealing with the fascists, and then we're dealing with the Democratic Party, and that's a real problem. So
that's why, and thank you for the respect. It's mutual, but that's why one of the reasons why I'm nervous.
Yeah,
about letting the Democrats redistrict because you'll lose Katie Porter, you'll lose Ro Khanna, just like we lost Dennis Kucinich.
Give me another option, please.
Yeah, keep it the way it is.
And let them roll over.
Because it's fair, and what we need to do then is win those Republican districts. But this is like mutually assured destruction. If they pull the plug, which they're going to do, if we pull our own plug, we wind up with a nightmare again in California. So Don, very well taken. Let's go to Lynn Feinerman. We're going to go to nukes soon. Kevin Kamps has joined us. I want to recognize somebody's whatever. Lynn Feinerman, go ahead.
Harvey, that was Kevin Kamps.
Oh, okay. Kevin, you're with us there. Go ahead, Lynn Feinerman.
There's just signs that says the host is not allowing mute them. Anyway, I would like to respond to Don Goldmacher by saying that if we really want to get rid of the inside of the Democrat, we have to go after, we have to investigate, we have to attack people like James Carville. James Carville is married to a Republican operative. Can you imagine that they are not working together? I mean, this is a ridiculous thing that the Democratic Party has been maintaining for decades. Carville has way too much influence. And so many of the people who are in the inside of the Democratic Party are in the pockets of big oil, fossil fuel, groups like AIPAC. We need to clear them out.
Yeah. And, I keep wondering how many of these Democrats are really Republican? But, you know, and then Gavin Newsom having stabbed us in the back on the most important issue of all, which is Diablo Canyon, which is the most important in my mind, and Myla's and others. I don't trust these guys. And what we saw in Ohio, they used redistricting to get rid of Dennis Kucinich. Who are they going to, if the Democrats get control of redistricting in California, who are they going to get rid of? So anyway, I know we're getting, Kevin wants to be recognized on his cell phone. Is that right, Kevin? So,
Yeah,
so
I
go
think I
ahead.
am. Can you hear
There
me?
you go. Okay, Pookie Amsterdam, and then I think we're going to move on from this. It's been a great discussion, really critical, and we got to get to talking about how we're going to protect the vote. I mean, essentially, the Republicans are going to try and repeal the 19th Amendment by, the one most reliable anti-Trump group in the United States is women, and they're going to do everything in their power. They made it clear because of the discrepancy between the name on a birth certificate and a married name. They're going to try and prevent millions of women from voting in 26. And that's something that we really have to look at. We'll do that in another call. Pookie Amsterdam, go ahead. And then we'll go into nukes. Well, I recognize THORNE DREYER for a minute, too. Go ahead, Pookie. Oh, Pookie, I got to unmute you. There we go.
And okay, hi. Thank you. And thank you both. And thank you all. I just want to point out that, yes, James Carville is awful. And yes, some of the entrenched Democrats are really bad. However, it took a long time to get from Eisenhower to Trump. It took a long time to go from Edward Murrow or Cronkite to Sean Hannity. And the fact is that Dem on Dem, not violence, but Dem bashing from within the party is not going to help us win the election. Yes, there are Dems who should get out of the way. My senator's Chuck Schumer. As wonderful as he should step down at least and let someone else be the minority leader. However, bashing Democrats as we go into this, the GOP wants Democrats in disarray, wants this, this us attacking each other and say it's not good enough. We're not doing enough. While the Republicans and MAGA are in lockstep. I think, yes, obviously, we need to bring in the progressives. I love Dennis Kucinich. It's horrible that they redistricted to get him out, but we need to take a long plan. What is going to get people on board together? Policy first. Policy first. It's what got Mamdani elected in New York, and that's what the Democrats need. Not to attack each other, but to say, this is our platform. This is what we will do. These are the 5 irrefutable things that we will do when elected, because MAGA is the problem and the Democrats are the answer.
Well, I'm very well spoken, Pookie. You're in New York, right? Is that what you said? Schumer is your senator.
Yeah, Pokey muted, but yeah, we can draw that.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, I have been contemplating with great hope the idea that Stephen Colbert might run for the Senate seat in South Carolina.
But there's already somebody really good running for a Senate seat in South Carolina, isn't it? He should campaign for that person.
Okay, well, whatever the case, whoever's running from the Democratic side, and we are nonpartisan here, should run on the nuclear issue in South Carolina. They got a $9 billion nuclear corpse in South Carolina that they're talking about reviving. And next door in Georgia, and you got John Ossoff running there, they have a $40 billion boondoggle at Vogtle, the nuclear plant, that's going to bankrupt the state. And these are the issues that the Democrats have refused to deal with. We had in the big Biden bill a lot of money for nuclear, which is ridiculous. It's killing our economy, it's killing our jobs, killing our environment, killing us. And that's where Newsom has really betrayed us on a lot of issues. But the number one is the nuclear plant, which could kill us all. And Gavin Newsom has absolutely no excuse. He may be a Democrat, but that is just outrageous what he's done at Diablo Canyon. We're going to talk about that in a minute. We got KEVIN KAMPS with us. Lynn Feinerman, you have a hand. We'll go to
I just want to respond to Pookie. I love your name. But I have to say that you in particular ought to know what the Democratic underbelly is all about. Look what they're doing to Mamdani already in New York. Look who they put up against Mamdani, a convicted felon again. And I don't think that, I think we really need to face reality. I mean, I started out with the Dems 8 at the convention, okay? And there has to be some kind of transformation. Otherwise, they get in, they do nothing, just like we explained Obama did. And then underneath, the repugs are going mad, taking over this. So, it's not about bashing, it's about facing reality. Thank you.
Lynn, could you drop in the chat a link to your excellent interview show? Because your insights are so valuable and you share them regularly on your own show as well as here. And we always love to hear from you.
And we have another radio host before we go to KEVIN KAMPS and go into the world of nukes. THORNE DREYER, if you'll unmute, THORNE DREYER has a radio
give me some video.
I don't know how to do the video. So
Thorne, you can turn it on yourself. You couldn't before, but you should be able to now.
So THORNE DREYER goes all the way back to Liberation News Service in 1968, and he has RAG Radio in Houston, which to my knowledge is not a Pacifica affiliate, but I've seen a lot of his stuff. It's really great. Thorne, you're unmuted. So, and you have a book out. Which
I was gonna show it because I had something to say about the cover, but
well, go ahead and
I don't know
if you can email it maybe to Steve Caruso or put it in the chat. That would be a way we can do it. I don't know why you can't get your video, but go ahead. And
I don't see a control for it.
Okay.
I do. I'm sorry.
Okay, so THORNE DREYER, I saw him on with Jim Hightower. And of course, you have nuclear plants in Texas that we're trying to shut. One thing I love about Texas, by the way, is that Trump was on yesterday in front of the whole world, completely lying about wind power. We're going to segue into energy here. Texas, by far, has the largest output of wind-driven electricity in the country. I mean, the second most is Iowa, and Texas is at least twice as much as Iowa. And in fact, in West Texas at night, when the windmills are running, electricity is too cheap to meter. You have a free electricity in West Texas at night because of wind power. Trump sat in front of the world and said that wind is the most expensive form of energy. It's ridiculous. Nuclear is the most expensive form of energy, except for maybe hamsters in a cage. And wind is one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest, and led by Texas. So Thorne, where are you here?
I'm right here.
Can we see you here?
I'm at the lower part of the screen. Yes, I'm here.
There you are. Okay, there you go. So THORNE DREYER here. And you've got, what is your radio station in Houston?
It's KOOP in Austin.
You're in Austin.
I'm in Austin. I used to be in Houston. Houston's my home, but I live in Austin now and have lived here for quite a while.
Well, I love Austin. I have a friend who used to teach at the UT, and he said that Austin was a great town in a bad neighborhood.
Yeah, that's somebody mentioned. Yeah, Austin was great, but it's surrounded by Texas.
Yeah. Well, show the cover of your book.
Okay.
There you go.
It's backwards. That picture is of me at the 1972 Democratic Convention.
Well, that's where you won the Fidel Castro lookalike contest.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
But I look kind of the same now, I think. But I was the year before that. I was in the streets at the Democratic Convention, and then this was the McGovern year. and I was on the floor with the floor pass. So incredible amount of difference in that.
Well, Thorne's book is a tremendous a magical mystery tour through the era, and he's been reporting and writing. And we want to get you hooked up with the Pacifica Network. So give us a couple minutes, real quick, on what's happening in Texas, and then we'll jump in on nuclear.
Okay. Well, what?
We have 102 people with us.
Huh?
We got 102 people with us.
Yes. Okay. Well, the book is about it. One, it brings in Texas in a way that it hasn't been, Austin and Houston, in ways that it hasn't been nationally in reporting on the 60s. And it's also kind of a memoir for me because it's everything that I've written I was the founder of the RAG, the underground newspaper in Space City in Houston. I was a founder. And I wrote for Liberation News Service in New York. And I've all of this, everything that I've written since 1967 basically is in this book.
Okay.
And so it's sort of a memoir in a sense. And it's definitely
it's a living memoir. It's a living memoir of the last, how many years is it now? 50, I hate to say it, that we've been out there in the streets. There you go, Notes from the Underground. And Thorne has been a great reporter and a very important cog in the. So you're going to be in the progressive movement, and you're going to be reporting on Texas, you and Alice, and we want to keep you in the loop here on what happens with the gerrymandering and also with their nuclear plants. Tell me, why isn't there a more organized force coming out of Texas advocating for wind power? I mean, the wind industry in Texas is by far the biggest in the United States. Why isn't there a powerful Texas lobby for wind?
I don't know the answer to it. It certainly seems like there should be. But there's so many things that happen in Texas that are not logical. Alice, do you know anything more about wind power in Texas?
Know that when Jim Hightower was ag commissioner, he mapped the entire state of Texas for wind and solar. And that it's on the basis of that, and that was years ago, that it allowed people to go in and develop all this. I know we got a great candidate, Clayton Tucker, running with Jim Hightower's blessing for ag commissioner, and maybe with a voice like that would happen for you. You get wind and solar advocacy in a new way.
Well, wind in Texas is by far the biggest source of wind power in the country. By far, way more than California, twice as much as Iowa, which is second. And I just don't understand, and Ron Leonard's on the call with us, and we'll segue into the nuclear side with Kevin Kamps here, and I think Roger Rapoport has joined us. Roger, you should also be in touch with Thorne and his media connections. Thorne is one of the great journalists of our time, and so is Roger Rapoport. So I don't understand, and if you guys can get back to us and maybe organize it, why the President of the United States, God help us, thinks that can sit in the people of Europe and tell us that wind power is the most expensive source when in fact it's the cheapest, and why there isn't a huge force in national politics for the wind energy industry coming out of Texas. It's literally billions of dollars of windmills in West Texas, and literally electricity too cheap to meter. Why isn't this being publicized?
Is it because there are other interests in Texas in the way in terms of energy that are holding sway? And we're talking about
there are, but by this point in time, the wind industry should be strong enough to have a very powerful public lobby, and I don't see why it doesn't. Well,
I really don't know the answer to
that. That's the topic for your next book. Your Notes from the Underground is really great, by the way. Thank you for it. Thank you for your reporting.
Thank you for reading it.
Well, my pleasure. And I need to hook you up. You need to hook up with the Pacifica people, KPFT, Egberto Willies, and so really expand the radio muscle for the left in Texas. But let's figure out why Texas isn't. And you have nuclear plants there, for God's sakes. And in fact, the nuclear plant, when you had the big freeze in Texas, the South Texas nuke had to shut down. Kevin Kamps will know about this because the pipes froze during the big freeze at the nuke. The pipes froze. Kevin, is that right? Do you want to jump in on South Texas and what's going on with the energy situation in Texas?
Yeah, I don't remember the details, but South Texas Project did go out of operations during that winter emergency situation. Hundreds of people died. The wind turbines kept operating, and it's not the only place in the country where something like that's happened. I remember Pilgrim in Massachusetts, time after time, had to shut down because of severe weather, including blizzards. So nuclear power is too dangerous to operate during extreme weather, whereas renewables, of course, aren't dangerous at all, and they're reliable. So the propaganda has turned the world upside down and through the looking glass on this stuff. And a part of the answer to your question was raised by people in the chat and out loud. Other energy interests, whether it's the oil and gas industry or other dirty, dangerous, and expensive energy industries, including nuclear, have huge propaganda arms. And so they bash renewables on a daily basis when the truth is the opposite.
And Kevin, really quick, these nuclear plants are also unsafe to be operating in pleasant weather.
Right. Well,
yeah,
that's.
I mean, they've got the inmates in charge of the asylum. So yeah, you're right.
Well, we want to discuss, and I'm serious, Alice and Thorne. Somebody needs to look at the energy picture in Texas and make an issue of it. Because if anybody should be leading the charge on wind power in the United States, it should be Texas.
Well, Jim Hightower has certainly raised those issues consistently. And
well, let's get him on with us.
He has quite a following.
Well, let's get him on with us. I know he's been on yours.
Network. Can you please just get...
Excuse me, I know some of the details about what happened in Texas. One of the reactors that supplied electricity to over 1 million households went offline for 72 hours during that freeze. And that, as Kevin said, is actually can be attributed directly to numerous deaths during that freeze when the wind turbines that were not engineered to withstand the kind of cold that was experienced that winter also went down. So it was a kind of a combination. And by the way, Harvey, you were right. It was that the pumping system that provided coolant to keep the reactor from blowing up froze, similar to what had happened at 3 Mile Island that caused the meltdown at 3 Mile Island. And that's why the reactor was shut down and stayed offline for 72 hours. I just wanted to provide that detail.
And I remember that Tucker Carlson and the right-wingers jumped in and blamed the whole thing on freezing windmills. Now, they did make a mistake. The wind industry in Texas made a mistake and put in windmills that were not designed to withstand those cold temperatures. If they had put in the windmills that they had in Wisconsin or, in Minnesota, those windmills would have stayed operative. So that's bad on the wind industry in Texas. But on the other hand, as MYLA points out, the pumps froze, for God's sakes, at South Texas, at STMP, which is partly owned by the city of Austin, by the way. Just as the city of Los Angeles owns a part of the 3 reactors at Palo Verde in Arizona, Austin which has a muni. Austin has a municipal utility, right? They own part of South Texas. And we tried for years to get Austin to divest their part ownership in South Texas, and so far to no avail.
And I believe that there was an effort on the part of the city council of Austin and the municipal government to divest, but they failed in that effort.
Right. So, Ruth Strauss, go ahead, Ruth. And then I want to go to Kevin to talk about what's happened at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I will point out, Carl Grossman and I put out a piece, which maybe we can put in the link in the chat, pointing out that in France and elsewhere, nuclear reactors have been shutting because of heat waves. Because the water of the rivers in Europe gets too hot, and they can't pour more hot water from the nuke, or else they'll kill everything. And that's happened in the U.S. as well. Maybe, Kevin, you know specifically. Ruth Strauss, go ahead, and then we'll go to Kevin. Ruth?
Oh, this was just a quickie that, and I don't know whether it would have made a difference. You guys are much more savvy about these things. But Greg Abbott, cowboy Lone Star State, also would not share any grid with the neighboring states. I believe New Mexico and Arizona or whatever. There's a consortium of grids down there, and he decided to go it alone. So that was another reason they had no electricity. Thanks.
Well, my understanding is that Texas has its own grid and is not connected to any of the larger grids.
With one
Like
exception.
there are-
And Greg Casar is lobbying now to hook up to the national. Is that right, Alice? You were about to say?
No, I was going to say that the exception is El Paso, which is in a different time zone. And it was linked up to New Mexico, and it did not have the problems that the rest of the state had. So I hope Greg Casar, I haven't heard that, but I hope Greg Casar is doing what you're saying.
There was a guy in Texas who was really great on the no nuke side. His name was Smitty. Maybe it was Tom Smith. Do you guys know him?
Tom Smith.
Yes.
Is he still on the case?
Yeah, he's retired, but he's still quite active.
Well, there's a contradiction for you. I think that applies to a lot of us, right, Thorne?
Yeah,
right. Kevin, can you tell us now, something has happened, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to focus on nuclear today. Something has happened in the nuclear industry that no one ever imagined, that only Trump could have come up with, but is devastating. Donald Trump has intervened and fired a commissioner from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This is staggering. And Carl's been with us on this in all the years that we've been fighting the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, back to the 70s when it was created. No one ever dreamed that a president would intervene personally and fire a commissioner from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Can you describe this, Kevin? It's astounding.
Yep, it happened several weeks ago now. The commissioner's name is Christopher Hansen. He was actually Biden's chairman of the NRC. They served 5-year terms. So when Trump took the White House back, Hansen stayed on the commission, but he was demoted to just another commissioner. And Trump named his own chairman, a Republican. And that's how it works. The occupant of the White House gets the majority on the NRC commission, 3 of the 5. And 2 Democrats, in this case, get to stick around as commissioners. But what Trump has done is he's really doubled down on Biden's bad nuclear policies, kept them all in place, but he's gone further. And so, firing an active commissioner with no reason given out of the blue, that's pretty extreme behavior. What's ironic about it is that Hansen was very pro-nuclear. Just a little bit of background. He was Dianne Feinstein's senior Senate staffer on pushing consolidated interim storage facilities for over a decade. And that's probably what got him tapped by the Democrats and Biden to become first a commissioner during Trump 1. That's another irony, is that Trump just fired somebody who he nominated several years back when he was president before. Not unprecedented either. So another thing about Hansen to know is that he is from South Haven, Michigan, which is the company town for the Palisades atomic reactor. Very pro-Palisades, was throughout Biden's tenure, remains so under Trump. So in addition to firing an NRC commissioner for no reason given out of the blue, Trump has issued executive orders in recent weeks that really what it is nuclear safety regulation is now in absolute free fall. It's never been good, including under Democratic administrations. It always gets worse under Republican administrations, only this time, all bets are off. We're very much living on borrowed time. Again, Palisades is kind of the poster child for this madness. Never before in the history of nuclear power in the US or internationally has a closed for good reactor been brought back into operations. Palisades is the precedent, but it's quickly being followed by 3 Mile Island Unit 1, also Duane Arnold in Iowa, which narrowly missed a bullet in 2020, a derecho direct hit. And thank you to a single NRC staffer who would not let the cover-up happen. it came out that there was a 1% chance of a meltdown at Duane Arnold in August of 2020. They had a very dicey number of days. Luckily, the worst didn't happen. Duane Arnold is a Fukushima Daiichi twin design, got direct hit by tornado strength straight line winds and narrowly made it out of that. They're supposed to keep meltdown risks at worst 1 in 10,000, preferably 1 in a million. But they came to a 1 in 100 chance at Duane Arnold. And of course, you know, these probabilistic risk assessments are kind of fiction in some ways. Look at Fukushima Daiichi, a 1 in a million times a 1 in a million times a 1 in a million risk. That's a 1 over, I believe, 18 zeros. That's called 1 in quintillion chance on March 10th, 2011, that would happen. And it happened beginning on March 11th of 2011, 3 meltdowns. And that's the risk level being taken at Palisades. You've got the zombie reactor restart. That's breakdown phase risks. And they want to add 2 new reactors on that tiny site. Those are break-in phase risks. Think of Chernobyl. That was a break-in phase disaster. Chernobyl was less than a year old, Unit 4. And 3 Mile Island, Unit 2 was less than a year old, just a few months into operations, another break-in phase disaster. But so too was Fermi Unit 1. It was a brand new reactor that had a partial core meltdown. So you're piling up all that kind of risk at Palisades. And it's just one example, but it shows where things are at these days.
Complete insanity. And I do want to point out, I'll get to MYLA in a second, that, you know, Gavin Newsom is making a big show of taking on Donald Trump. And everything Trump does is bad. And we know that Trump is a satanic monster and all that stuff. But Newsom stabbed us in the back in California. He signed a deal, omnibus deal in 2018 to phase out the 2 reactors at Diablo Canyon. Then he reneged in 2022 and is taxing the ratepayers of California $11 billion to keep the 2 reactors, which are totally unsafe, operating at Diablo Canyon and in violation of the Clean Water Act. Now, you know, the NRC was bad enough, but there is no effective nuclear regulation of all the 94 reactors. I mean, when you have a president firing a commissioner off the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, you're done. So in effect, Gavin Newsom is telling the people of California that he has endorsed nuclear regulation or lack thereof as interpreted by Donald Trump. You know, he is in Trump's pocket on nuclear regulation. Now, the Mothers for Peace in San Luis Obispo, I don't know where Linda Seeley is. She was going to come on. They have sent a brilliant letter to that effect. It was not my idea to come up with that. But they're saying, look, you're fighting Trump, but here you have Trump in charge of decimating nuclear regulation, and we have these 2 reactors that are 40 plus years old. Are you a Trumpian nuclear advocate? Because you can't, in good conscience, allow these reactors to continue to operate. MYLA RESON, go ahead.
Thanks, Harvey. I'm wondering, Kevin, you mentioned the recent executive order that actually it elevated production of electricity via nuclear power to looking at safety. It's my understanding that in that letter that the Mothers for Peace wrote to Gavin Newsom and others, they cited that they said that DOGE went in and cut staffing for safety for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And I'm wondering, Carl or Kevin or Harvey, do we have any details about what kind of staff, how many, do we have numbers about how many people who are looking at safety considerations for nuclear power were actually removed as a result of the DOGE cuts?
I don't have numbers, but I can put in the chat a web post that Paul Gunter wrote. The headline that DOGE invading the NRC headquarters was "Get busy and rubber stamp," specifically Department of Energy reactor proposals. These are often military related, microreactors on military bases or at the nuclear weapons labs. It's all Department of Energy jurisdiction, National Nuclear Security Administration jurisdiction. DOGE, the DOGE official was actually quoted saying licenses. So that is the lead reactor proposals in the country now are these micro reactors and so-called small modular reactors that are being pushed by the Department of Energy at federal sites. And DOGE has ordered NRC to rubber stamp their approval.
Right,
Literally.
and they use the term rubber stamp. Trump wants the term rubber stamp to be the extant safety policy at these reactors. Roger Rapoport is with us. He's in Michigan. He was has the greatest credential in all of journalism, which is that he was the editor of the University of Michigan Daily. Doesn't get any better than that. And Thorne and Alice in Texas, I hope you'll take a look at what's going on with Nuclear Regulatory Commission regulation in Texas. STMP is still operating, for God's sakes. It's a nightmare. Stephen Sondheim, you raised a hand. Roger, if you want to jump in on this, please tell us about what's going on at Palisades. That would be great. Stephen Sondheim, please.
Yeah, it's Stephen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to have Kevin mention, if he hasn't already, the easing of the regulation from the NRC about radioactive standards. They're trying to make them even less than they are today, and people are getting very sick already today. Can you say something about that, Kevin?
Yeah, that's related to a proposal that the NRC is expediting to do away with the linear no threshold theory on radiation harmfulness to human health. The linear no threshold theory says that any exposure to radioactivity, no matter how small the dose, carries a health risk. They like to focus on cancer, but there are a spectrum of health risks, of course, and these accumulate for a lifetime. And so that's the linear no threshold theory that NRC is now considering doing away with. And boy, that would be very convenient to the nuclear power industry, the nuclear weapons industry, because then they could expedite production, whether it's of nuclear weapons or of electricity at nuclear power plants, because now workers and even the public will have less radiation health protections than they currently do. And the current regulations are very far from adequate, and they want to gut them.
God, that's a nightmare. And so basically, is it fair to say that we have, at this point in time, with Donald Trump, zero effective regulation of the nuclear power industry?
They're working on it. People are fighting back. My coworker, Cindy Folkers, Dan Hirsch, who just passed on tragically, devastatingly, we're leading, coalition efforts, and I'm sure I'm leaving a lot of names out. They were doing preparation sessions for people to zoom in on so they could learn what to say to the NRC at these very short. People were given 2 minutes to speak at the NRC. The NRC was literally making up the process as they went. It wasn't even a formal public comment. They were just going through the motions, but people are fighting back. Cindy Folkers would be the point person to ask about what's the latest. The deadline for comments was July 25th, just passed. So there are people fighting it. I know Nuke Watch Wisconsin submitted comments. I'm sure lots of people did.
Myla Reson, you want to jump in there? I want to get to Roger Rapoport to talk about what's happening at Palisades and this insanity. And, they've also talked about refiring or firing up. They never fired it. VC Summer. $9 billion disaster in South Carolina. It's just sitting there. They sent inspectors over to look at this dead, unfinished reactor project, and they all came back. Oh, it looks pretty good. But Palisades is a serious one, and Roger's in the vanguard on that one with you, Kevin. Go ahead, Myla Reson, and then we'll go to Roger.
Thank you, Kevin, for mentioning that. Up until the end, Dan Hirsch was fighting on this, trying to get people to comment on this horrendous lowering of already low and inadequate standards for exposure of individuals to ionizing radiation. But, it's such a loss. Dan Hirsch has been campaigning for years in so many important fronts. He testified in Congress, in the Senate, against he advocated for the immediate closure of the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant when Barbara Boxer introduced him into a Senate Energy Committee hearing. And at that time, he outlined all of the known faults that had been mapped on and around the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. We knew at that time, he pointed out in that testimony years ago, that the resident inspector from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Dr. Michael Peck, had determined by looking at the license for Diablo that Diablo was not engineered to withstand the kind of ground motion that might likely occur. And he said that that Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant should be immediately shut down until Pacific Gas and Electric could prove that it could withstand a quake. Since then, we have had numerous faults mapped, including most recently a vertical thrust fault that is situated directly below Diablo Canyon nuclear power. We already knew that the plant wasn't engineered to withstand ground motion years ago. And yet, and by the way, I just want to say that Betty Yee, who is running for governor, presided over hearings where Dan Hirsch testified and talked about how the plant could not withstand that kind of ground motion, and that the likely outcome of such ground motion would be a meltdown. So anybody who's running for governor or for office in the state of California would really have to understand that we're skating on thin ice here. It's energy, electricity that we can generate without nuclear, without coal. We can do it sustainably, and we've got to shut those nuclear plants down right away. We're just lucky that we haven't sustained we haven't had a meltdown so far.
And we now have proven resources in Texas with the wind power, in California with the solar, to carry these states without nuclear at all. Well, this is not pie in the sky stuff. We're not saying, oh, someday solar will be cheap enough. It's by far the cheapest. And I put in the invitation to today's call. I mean, China's exports of solar panels and of lithium-ion batteries completely dwarfs the American industry, as does their exports of electric cars. I mean, basically, Donald Trump has put us out of business here. I mean, if this was any kind of store, the United States, this guy would have been fired years ago. Roger Rapoport, you're in Michigan, and you're working with Kevin on this Palisades restart, which is the first big restart they're talking about. Can you tell us what's going on with the NRC and what this craziness and trying to restart Palisades is all about?
So on last Thursday, the NRC basically green-lighted the restart of the Palisades nuclear reactor. The company that's doing it, Holtec, wants to start refuel in next month, and they want to open the reactor in December. And Kevin, who's been fighting this battle for 32 years, is certainly the world's leading expert on what's happened. But I think the fact that they're attempting to restart this plant, which, by the way, does not meet any of the regulatory standards for nuclear plants that are operating anywhere else, and in fact could not even be built today, is uniquely suited for a catastrophe in the sense that no one has ever attempted to do this before. So unlike all the other plants that we've been talking about that did have to meet code, so to speak, this one didn't. And what that means is, as the former design nuclear engineer at the plant for 6 years, who also was the VP of Con Ed, Alan Blinn, and a set of petitions they filed, for the first time in its history, this plant now has to figure out how they're going to comply with standards that they can't meet at every level. There are so many problems. Literally, it would be like a house that's condemned, literally, was set to be torn down. And suddenly you come in and you say, well, I'm going to just put in new plumbing and new electrical and a new roof and all that kind of stuff, even though I'm not going to meet the building code because I'm grandfathered in. So there is no nuclear story anywhere that can possibly compare with what's happening at Palisades right now, in the sense that Kevin has been right all along for 32 years. This was a disaster waiting to happen. But none of us ever imagined that it could happen in this way. So I would say this to anyone who's been following this case. I've been putting a lot of things on Kevin's site, Beyond Nuclear. Obviously, I have a podcast called The Nuclear Reactor Next Door. Alan Blinn just put out a press release about his opposition today for hearings. Anybody who cares about this, if you can imagine, all these plants we've been talking about meet code, this one doesn't. So every time there's an article about this plant, there are two things that are published. One is that this is the first time in history that anyone has restarted a nuclear power plant. And I want to give you a very a good comparison. So Constellation Energy is restarting 3 Mile Island 1. This is the largest fleet operator in America. This is a plant that does meet code, but Constellation is taking 3 years to get this plant up and running. Okay. And by the way, they didn't bid on restarting this plant. Nobody who's actually a fleet operator or a nuclear power plant operator wanted to get involved with this plant. And that's why a company that has never done this before, never built or operated a nuclear reactor, that it actually had the intention and had the contract to destroy it, to tear it down, to demolish it, has gotten all this money. And I want to add this point, which parallels some of the things that have been said today. Let's keep in mind that the two people who were instrumental in getting this going were two Democratic governors. One, the current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, and the other, the former governor, Jennifer Granholm, who was Joe Biden's Secretary of Energy, who was all over this. And the one place where Joe Biden and Donald Trump and Whitmer seem to find common ground is Palisades. And as Kevin has correctly pointed out, we're looking at a subsidy, the initial subsidy in the range of $8 billion for 600 jobs, which I think, Kevin, you can correct me on this, but I think we're at $20 million per employee. That's the amount of government subsidy. It's being subsidized in every way possible. They're very careful not to publish this number. Kevin publishes it all the time. But I want to add this footnote to what I'm saying. Every single article that covers this story talks about the green revolution, about how this plant is going to be carbon free, which it's not, and it's absolutely not green energy in any way, shape, or form. As recently as yesterday, the Washington Post was advocating for nuclear. David Andrella wrote a long piece about the future of energy. And in this piece, he said that the future of green power in America depends on nuclear because it's clean, which it's not. And this underscores the argument that both sides use. And the reason they use it is very simple. The contributions flow from these companies to both sides of the aisle. And that's why the entire Michigan legislature voted for it. That's why the Democratic Party doesn't oppose this in Congress. That's why Joe Biden and Jennifer Granholm and our current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, because they all get campaign support from these so-called green energy companies. So every time you read a story or see something online or read something, it's imperative that you explain to these people that it's not clean green energy, that this plant does not meet any of the licensing criteria that all the other plants we've been talking about today have to meet. And as Kevin has been pointing out for 32 years, this plant has just been an accident waiting to happen. In fact, when they built it, as Kevin will explain, Bechtel, who built it, got sued by Consumers Energy, who eventually got rid of the plant and for hundreds of millions of dollars. And there was a huge settlement. And then they sold it to one of the top nuclear energy companies in the world, Energy. They got rid of it early. They closed it down early because there were so many problems with the plant that it wasn't safe for them to operate it. Kevin, am I right?
Well, the lawsuit, to my understanding, was the original owner, Consumers Power at the time,
Right.
suing Bechtel, who was the architect
Right.
engineer, for huge flaws. They
Right.
sued him for $300 million
Right.
in 1971 dollars, and then they settled for $13 million. So you'd have to adjust for inflation. It'd all go up into the hundreds of millions of damages, billions sought. They settled for less, and then they fired it up. And we've been dealing with this very dangerous nuclear lemon for, I say, 60 years, because it was designed in the mid-1960s. Ground was broken in 67. They operated for 51 years from 71 to 2022. And that per job cost, it depends on every time they get a new bailout, we got to redo the math. The current math is they've gotten $3.12 billion for the restart, divided by 280 restored jobs. So it's come down from that initial figure. but it's still in the millions of dollars per job restored, compared to a figure that Roger called my attention to back in 2023. The average cost of a state subsidized job in Michigan, creating it, was $29,000 per job. So compare that to millions of dollars per job at Palisades. It's obviously very inefficient, to be polite about it. If you add up all the bailouts they're seeking, it's more than $8 billion for the restart, another $7.5 billion for the 2 new reactors. It's a grand total of more than $16 billion they're seeking just at Palisades. And something that just came to light in recent weeks is that now Holtec, announced by its CEO, Krishna Singh, is going to do an initial public offering to go public as early as January. And it kind of dawned on us, our team that's watchdogging Palisades, that, this explains a lot. Everything they're doing, these huge risks they're willing to take at Palisades, these grandiose statements that there will be no more shutdowns. We're drawing a line in the sand at Palisades, of all places. We're going to build new reactors here, and it'll be our model for the rest of the country and the world. These hyperbolic statements, all leading up to an initial public offering in January of 2026, shortly preceded by a very dangerous reactor restart at this 60-year-old zombie. So Holtec is all about making money and not spending it on things like replacing the steam generators, $500 million. So that's why we're in such peril. This company is crooked, has been convicted of bribery, has lied about it under oath, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, they're incompetent. Yeah, they're inexperienced, but they're also crooked. And that's the problem, that they're willing to take risks that no other company was willing to take. That's why nobody jumped in at Palisades except for this decommissioning company, Holtec.
Well, I wanted to also, first of all, Roger, I wanted to introduce you to Thorne Dryer. I don't know if he may have just left, actually. Thorne has a radio station in Texas and does a lot of writing, and you two guys should be in touch. But you raised the figure of $16 billion. How much energy could alternative energy, wind and solar, could Michigan get from $16 billion compared to the 1 gigawatt that they're expecting from Palisades? I mean, it's economically, it's completely insane. Same as Dabble Canyon. Newsom is sticking the ratepayers of California with $11 billion to keep Diablo Canyon operating, when $11 billion would be more than enough.
Harvey, let Kevin explain to you about the steam tubes on the reactor, and what the NRC found out. Kevin, if you can brief everybody on the steam tubes.
Okay, we're at the top of the hour, by the way. We'll go to 4:20 California time. So we still have 75 people with us. We have the longest attention span of anybody in the business, but we'll end at 4:20. But Kevin, please, let's hear about the
Explain about the steam tubes, yeah.
But let's also remember, one sec, let's also remember $16 billion. You could totally solarize Michigan. There's enough wind energy in Michigan for $16 billion to supply the state's entire energy needs, and it completely dwarfs any possible power that they could get from Palisades. Isn't that right, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, even Jennifer Granholm as governor, I mean, I would praise her when she deserved it. She had a offshore wind power study panel commission that looked at the potential on the Great Lakes available to Michigan, which is about halfway out into each of the Great Lakes that it borders. And the potential the Michigan State University Land Use Institute had identified for the Great Lakes as a whole, more than 300,000 megawatts of offshore wind potential. So what Granholm did as governor was, this was in 2010, look at the best places in the lakes, 25 criteria, things like we have to avoid fish spawning grounds. We have to avoid ecologically sensitive areas. We have to avoid historic shipwrecks, even aesthetics, the view from the shore. There were 25 criteria, and their final conclusion was extreme southern Lake Michigan, which has places like Gary, Indiana already. So talk about eyesores, the steel mills, the pollution. Extreme northern Lake Michigan, Escanaba area, which is also partially industrialized, and also where Saginaw Bay opens up into Lake Huron. These are already industrialized areas of the lakes. Unfortunately, And wind is not going to pollute those areas. It may be, in some people's mind, an eyesore. For other people, it's a very hopeful thing to look at. And right there alone, those three places, several thousand megawatts electric of wind, which is way more than the 800 megawatts at the zombie reactor at Palisades, another 600 megawatts at the so-called small modular reactor new builds. And regarding the steam generators, that's the safety issue getting the most attention. Consumers Energy told the state of Michigan in spring of 2006 the steam generators needed to be replaced. That was 20 years ago now. So here comes Holtec, supposedly to decommission Palisades. So what did Holtec do the first 2 years it had its hands on this plant, 2022 to 2024? They neglected basic safety maintenance on the steam generators, which caused extensive degradation of the very thin-walled steam generator tubes. They now, like I said, don't want to pay $500 million to replace these steam generators that are overdue for replacement for 20 years. They want to do Band-Aid fixes on 80% of the damaged tubes. They want to plug 20% of the worst damaged tubes. And oh, by the way, compensate for those plugs by unplugging 617 tubes that were plugged 35 years ago as a safety precaution, because these steam generators, their design is infamous for vibration damage, not unlike what happened at San Onofre that led to 2 reactors permanently shutting down in 2013. And we've recently learned, some documents that Dave Lochbaum sent to us, that these particular steam generators at Palisades were actually fabricated in the early 1970s. Luckily, they were stored for 2 decades in liquid nitrogen. That was the right thing to do. But they operated from 1991 until 2022, and they are now severely degraded, a self-inflicted wound, a rookie error by Holtec, which again has never operated a reactor, wasn't even sure what it was doing for 2 years, and then all of a sudden decided to restart Palisades. So talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. The tens of millions of dollars or more they're spending on sleeving 80% of the damaged tubes, that's public money. So a self-inflicted wound that they're now bandaging with public money. And Arnie Gunderson, our expert witness, nuclear engineer, has predicted multiple times they're going to blow a tube at Palisades. It's a question of when, not if. Hopefully they won't blow a large number of tubes, because that is a pathway to reactor core meltdown. But even a single tube will release radioactivity into the environment, just like happened at San Onofre in January of 2012, and has happened at other places.
Kevin, explain about the
in
containment.
February of 2000.
Okay, well, listen, we're talking with KEVIN KAMPS and ROGER RAPOPORT about the Palisades nuclear plant. We're almost out of time, guys. We've got 15 minutes left. Don't get too technical, but the bottom line is that these reactors are not insured.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
There's no insurance, right?
Harvey, there's something that Kevin needs to explain. Kevin, talk about the containment issue and the licensing that's required of new reactors and the containment regarding those steam, the leaks from the potential leaks.
Well, it was an interesting moment. January 14th of 2025, there was a technical meeting between NRC and Holtec about this steam generator tube degradation. And you mentioned Alan Blind, nuclear engineer, worked at a very high level at Palisades for a number of years. He had to correct the NRC who were poo-pooing our concerns about steam generator failure, because we kept bringing up San Onofre, and they said, oh, there was no radioactivity release at San Onofre. We heard otherwise, including in the news media at the time. And they said, oh, it's not possible for a steam generator tube failure to release radioactivity at Palisades. And fortunately for us, Alan, who understands the intricacies of this stuff, jumped in as a member of the public and said, oh, yes, there would too be a radioactivity release. That's a problem with the age-old design at Palisades. So I don't know, maybe they've taken steps to try to address this potential, but it certainly doesn't exist at Palisades. Like you said, they have largely to entirely grandfathered in Palisades' 60-year-old status, and they've been doing that since the mid-1960s. And they've learned a lot of lessons at Palisades that they've applied elsewhere, but not at Palisades. I mean, we haven't even talked about reactor pressure vessel embrittlement. Palisades is tied with Point Beach 2 in Wisconsin, bordering Lake Michigan, as worst neutron embrittled reactor pressure vessel in the country. But it has some competition. Diablo Canyon Unit 1, to name one of them. These are pathways to meltdown. if the emergency core cooling system is activated, these vessels through wall because of their embrittlement. And it has a lot to do with the bad metallurgy of the 1960s designs that they eventually figured out, but too late for Palisades.
Right. So, and this is an epidemic all over the country. I'm sure THORNE DREYER and ALICE, if you look at South STNP, you'll find many of the same problems. The average age of American reactor, of which there are 94 currently licensed, is 42 years, 42 years old. So, we're looking at an uninsured and now unregulated industry. I mean, the extant word under Donald Trump at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, after he fired one of the commissioners, is rubber stamp. I mean, that's what we're looking at here. Thank you for this. Stay with us, please. VINA COLLEY, you're in Southern Ohio, surrounded by another one. Everybody, we're glad to have you stay with us. I hope this isn't too much technical stuff, but the nuclear issue is one of those that's really on edge now. It was bad enough under Biden. He was not great on this issue. He put a lot of money in there. And now we have something that has never happened before, which is the firing of a commissioner. It's just, it's like Nixon firing whoever was looking into Watergate and Trump letting Maxwell go. Go ahead. Thorne, did you want to say something? Hold on.
Maya?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I got to get Thorne. I think he wants to. I can't unmute you, bro. So anyway.
Who are you trying to unmute?
THORNE DREYER.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I just was saying goodbye. I've really enjoyed this a lot. I think it's been very illuminating, but I have to get off.
Okay, well, listen, you need to hook up with Roger Rapoport and also Egberto, the other Pacifica people in Texas, and let's rock and roll. It's great to have you with us, though, Thorne.
Okay, and I'll be talking to you.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
No news. Bye-bye. Okay, VINA COLLEY, go ahead, please. We only got 11 more
One
minutes.
thing I don't ever hear anybody talking about is the Portsmouth Gas Diffusion Plant, and it is in production. It's in production with the high assay, low enriched uranium. They're doing something to these DU cylinders, and we've been told they're still making weapons. And one thing that nobody seems to understand, we're sitting on the largest aquifer in the Midwest, and our bedrock is fractured. They have over 12 waste cells sitting on top of this fractured bedrock, and we're contaminating water all the way to the Mississippi and all the way up to Indiana if the bedrock is fractured in the second layer, which when Marvin Resnikoff did a report for us back in 2005, there was contamination seeking into the larger aquifer.
Well, it's a nightmare. It's a real nightmare. And thank you, VINA, for holding the fort there in Southern Ohio. Steve Caruso, go ahead.
Yeah, and there's news out of Western Kentucky that they're going to have a private gaseous diffusion plant there, and the government's going all out for AI in the same locus. Has anybody got anything on that?
I don't know, but everybody's talking about AI needing all this energy. If AI is so smart, why don't they figure out how to get their own energy?
Right.
You see these giant AI data centers with rooftops that are miles of square footage, and none of them have solar panels on them.
Nuclear power is not artificial and it's not intelligent. So where does AI fit in?
Right.
It doesn't.
It's
There's
ridiculous.
just no. It's got no legs, but it's happening, and who's doing it is got to be corrected.
Well, to me, the Achilles, the way to bring down the nuclear industry is just to look at the numbers. I mean, the cost of solar is literally a tenth of nuclear now. And, China is exporting solar cells that are just, nothing can compete. Not even gas anymore can compete with renewables. And you're looking, Roger and Kevin, you're looking at Michigan, you're talking about $16 billion. For 800 megawatts, it's ridiculous. You could get 800 gigawatts.
If I can jump in here for a minute. So all these numbers have been crunched by Mark Jacobson at Stanford, who's been on your program. And his number is $230 billion to basically go green in Michigan, all of which would be paid for by the fact that energy rates would go down 60%. In other words, it's self-financing. That's what it would cost. So the whole state could be green by say 2035 if they would simply invest in wind, solar, and hydro basically, and geothermal. That's it. But I want to add this point, which is critical to what we've all been talking about today. I asked Alan Blinn, I said, if Holtec attempted to build a new nuclear plant on its own site, where it's planning to already build to, equivalent to Palisades, would they be able to get a license? And the answer is no. The design of Palisades does not meet current NRC standards. The most important example is how the plant is able to respond to a critical steam generator 2 rupture, which is what Kevin's been talking about. Palisades does not currently have the ability to contain radioactive steam from such a rupture. Current design requirements do, which means that if one of these hundreds and hundreds of tubes that are in question by the NRC itself were to fail, there would be a radioactive leak, which would inevitably mean an immediate shutdown of the plant. So when they talk about providing power to 600,000 homes from this plant, what they're not telling you is the first time one of these tubes fails, they're going to have to shut down the plant. So it's not only a question of a radiation leak, it's also a question of all this money going down the drain for a plant that may not be able to keep opening every time they have a tube failure.
It's insane. And the numbers, the question on solar and wind investments, and there's a ton of wind, as you know, in Michigan, as there is in northern Ohio and in the lakes.
Right.
What's the payback? 7, 8 years at the max. The price of solar and wind keeps dropping, as does critically battery storage, and the price of nuclear keeps rising. And for some reason, the geniuses at the Wall Street, the Washington Post, and elsewhere never talk about cost. They never talk about the kilowatt hour cost of nuclear versus solar. I guarantee I'm sure. What is the estimated kilowatt hour cost of the power that's going to come out of Palisades, if God forbid they ever reopen it? And how does that compare to the kilowatt hour cost of wind and solar? It's not even close. And nobody's talking about that. Really infuriates me. That's why I asked, where is the wind industry coming out of Texas? It's huge, but they're not saying anything. But Heidi, we're down to 5 minutes. Heidi Vertauer, please. Are you muted? Go ahead.
Just
Heidi.
wondering, I wrote a press release for the Davis-Besse nuclear power plant. I can't remember where it was exactly.
Toledo. It's in Toledo.
Right, Ohio. So I'm wondering, what's become of that, and where does that stand these days?
Well, nobody knows more about Davis-Besse than KEVIN KAMPS does. And, it's a nightmare. I mean, I testified in front of the Ohio House and Senate about Davis-Besse. It's like Night of the Living Dead in there. But, Kevin knows a ton about it. Then we're going to go to MYLA, and then we're basically going to be done. Kevin, just give us a couple words about Davis-Besse, then we'll go to MYLA and toke up. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, we also, me, Terry Lodge, Michael Keegan, and others gave a lot of attention to Davis-Besse from 2010 to 2016, trying to block the 20-year license extension, which it's operating under right now. And what became the key issue was their shield building, a part of their radiological containment, was revealed to be severely cracked. And what it means is they have no containment, essentially. And things like somebody said a nice summer day could be enough to bring that shield building down. The thermal change from a hot afternoon to a cool evening, that might be the final straw for that concrete shield building that is tens of stories tall. And if that happens, it could initiate the reactor core meltdown. There are safety systems located beneath the shield building. So the collapse of the shield building could cause the meltdown that the destroyed shield building would then not contain. So that's the level of absurdity at Davis-Besse.
Absolutely insane. Jan Danforth, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. We're about to sign off. Jan Danforth asked, why doesn't Newsom support real clean energy? Because the industry is being outbid. If there was a solar lobby that was bribing Gavin Newsom the way the nuclear lobby does, he'd shut it down. But, here we are, same in Michigan, same everywhere. The solar industry has got to get its act together. I mean, it's huge. And every number that you used in the economics of renewables versus nuclear is 10 times in favor of solar, in favor of Solartopian energy, but they're not in the political arena, and we got to find out why. MYLA RESON, go ahead.
I just want to thank Rhonda Roth, who's still with us, who messaged me earlier and alerted me to this new article about Miami's drinking water being threatened by Turkey Point nuclear power plant. And perhaps we can get to that information in the coming weeks. There's so much to cover.
Yes.
It's endless. So thank you, Rhonda, and sorry that we didn't talk more about it today, but I did put a link in the chat.
Well, Rhonda, we'll get to you. We'll do this again next week. And this was an amazing discussion. Thank you, Bob FITRAKIS, for the lowdown on Jeffrey Epstein way back when. And glad ALICE Thorne joined us from Texas. And JOHN STEINER, thank you for raising the issues. We got in the next one. We got to talk about protecting the vote, not just gerrymandering in 26. And Roger and Kevin, I looked in the wind industry in northern Ohio, and way back when, and the Ohio legislature killed it. $4 billion.
Harvey, Trump went on an all-out tirade today in the UK with Starmer on wind, and he hates it because they built windmills next to his golf courses, and he can't stand watching them. Drives him
right. But the problem with him is that
I just put it in the chat.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I saw some of that. The wind power is currently in Texas and elsewhere a tenth the cost of nuclear. And southern Michigan, northern Michigan, the Great Lakes, all of the northeastern United States could and should be powered by wind cheaper than nuclear. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Steve Caruso, for engineering, and Mike for co-convening. MYLA, thanks for sticking with the Solartopia show, as well as Tatanka. Listen, everybody, time to go toke up. It's 4:20. We will see you again next week in Greepland. That'll be 2:20 something or 2:30 something. And again, no nukes, everybody. These are dangerous but certainly interesting times. Take care.
2:33.
2:33. There you go.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everybody, thank you, and you'll and come back next week to everybody. Okay? See ya. See you in Solartopia.
Come on back now, you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Steve.